This is the main link for my router pantograph, and I've got my wash-cold router in there right now. But I want to build another main link that'll actually mount a little Dremel tool like this. I printed out the templates from the plans and I mounted these on a solid piece of wood. Normally I'd say to use plywood, but because this is only going to hold a little Dremel tool, we don't actually need anything that solid. In the pantograph I've got the downside actually on this side, but the way this Dremel tool is shaped, I really have very little to grab on here, so I think it'll be much better if I put it in like this. So I'm going to build this link and assemble it upside down, and I'm also going to make the holes smaller so that it fits this a bit better. So the router on the back, the thickest part should be fine in a 56mm hole. So I set my compass to 26mm, and let's mark that on here for how big a hole I actually need. The front of this router here is actually much narrower, and I think a 36mm hole will give me plenty of space. And this layer is actually going to go on the bottom, so I can actually draw an even smaller circle on here. And that should fit that tool just fine. But actually that's a bit small. I can't get in there with a screwdriver, so I'm going to make that a bit bigger. I just have to remember to cut to the middle circle. Now a couple of other changes. I don't need this arc to be as big because I don't have as big a hole in it and I'm not supporting a heavier router. So I can just cut this off right here. And I've also drawn a smaller arc in here. I located the center by drawing from here to here, and I set the compass from one of these here. And then I just drew another arc with a compass. I had to make a few more changes to make everything fit. So this one has got the double layer on the bottom, and here I've got just a single layer on the bottom with a small hole, and this is the extra layer which now goes on top, supported by these bits, and then this layer goes on here. And I have to make sure I don't assemble this backwards, because that happens to a lot of people. I'm assembling this in parts, and I'm assembling the non-critical parts first, so that when I put the last piece on I can worry about the alignment. I'm using lots of glue because this is just bandsaw cuts, so I need to fill those gaps a little bit. And I put some in the wrong place. Happens all the time. Okay, fit in here. So to get this part perfectly aligned, when I put this together, I just inserted all the shafts in here that I have from my other pantograph, and hopefully that will get it perfect when I glue this together. So let's just put some glue on here. And now, with all these pins in here, now let's just check this with a square. Yeah, the pins are perpendicular, so I should be good. I've been puzzling over how to mount this Dremel tool. This part here is cylindrical, but it's too far from the tip and that wouldn't be stable this way. And everything down here is kind of curved, but I'd want to grab it down here. So then I realized this part here comes off, but I don't really have enough to grip here, and I certainly don't have anything with that thread on it. But the waist right here is about 1 inch in diameter, just a bit over. So what I came up with is to put this through a hole, and that hole is just so it's tight, and then if I screw that against here, that tightens it from both sides, and so that holds the tip securely in place. To hold the Dremel in the right position, I added some screws in here, and I backed these out so that they hold the Dremel at just the right position, and I can adjust that. If you don't want to scratch up your Dremel tool, you can also put some spacers in there if you wanted to. And then this screws on top of here, and that clamps the Dremel tool in place. I went looking at different Dremel tools at Home Depot, and I realized not every one of them has this front part that comes off, which means you can't just pass it through a hole like that. What you have to do instead is cut this part right about here, and then just screw it together with some screws to clamp that Dremel tool in. After I shot my video on building the pantograph a few years ago, I made these knobs, and they're really handy. And they're really just little bits of plywood, and I'm going to put some glue in there. This is Gorilla Glue. It's probably not so good anymore, but the glue is just an extra touch. And I've roughened up the end of the shaft here, and the hole is a little bit undersized, so I really have to whack these in. So even without glue, that would stick. Well, surprisingly, this 3-year-old bottle of Gorilla Glue, which is thick as honey, still managed to foam up, so I think those glue joints are good. When Pat and I were experimenting with doing those inlays, we used this finest bit, which was a 3/64 Dremel bit, and with a 3-to-1 reduction, that means the follower needs to be 3 times as big, or about 9/64. I know inches are kind of ridiculous, but that works out to about 3 millimeters. And this shaft here is 1/8, so that was close, and we just put that in the follower, but the hole in here is bigger for these shafts. So I decided to grind one down a little bit, and this one actually ground a bit too small. So I'm going to make another end, and this one I'll hopefully get the right size. So there this one is, and it's the right size, and I polished it up on my buffing wheel, which is important because when you drag this thing across the paper template, it has to not cut the template. And I also polished up the square end of another rod, so I can use this 3/16 one with a 1/16 inch bit for doing 1/3 reduction with a template. So Pat Hawley and I have been experimenting using this pantograph to do inlay carving for guitar necks, and that works out really well. So I built a whole another pantograph for Pat because he helped me out a lot with building a ukulele series.